I've been working in the running business for about 20 years, and it's only about the last year that I've had any connection with the sport. And so, which sort of shows you where we're at to some extent. And I think the UK is quite go ahead with its attitude to how it's engaging with runners. In fact, it's quite interesting. I don't want to embarrass Niels, but Niels, who's the head of UK Athletics, I only met him for the first time at the airport. So there we go. But anyway, so what I'm going to run through today is I'm going to tell you a little bit about Runner's World. I'm going to talk a little bit about the market as we see it. Some of that you will have heard before. Some of it you've heard a little bit about it today already. Then I'm going to discuss a little bit why I think that sports administration, in this case athletics, doesn't really engage with the running consumer. And then I'm going to talk about a few examples about how to engage with them and some sort of test cases, some little stories that are from the UK. So it is a bit of a UK-centric talk, I'm afraid. But having spoken to most of my colleagues around the world, around Europe, it's actually pretty familiar territory for most of them. So this is, although the examples in the UK, most of the case studies are pretty much the same. So a little bit about Runner's World. We're not one of the largest, we are the largest media vehicle in this space. We publish around the world, as you can see. We publish online and offline. Historically, it's been magazines, but we have moved into other areas as well. We publish in 15 countries around the world, 9 of them European countries. We're continuing to look to expand. We're looking at other opportunities at the moment in other countries where we think that there is a market for a running magazine or indeed for a running website. But we've embraced the market as we see it. I mean, I think the first thing you should understand about publishers, we're barometers of markets. We look at the market, then we think if there's an opportunity, we publish into that market. We're not makers of markets. We don't try to create it in any direction. I had some conversations earlier last year actually with the IAAF about the youth athletics market. We're not in the youth athletics market. We didn't see there was an opportunity. We didn't want to publish in that area. So we go where we think there is a market and an opportunity. So we do more than publish magazines and websites. We put on events, holidays, training camps. We offer online training, coaching. It's all, we are, I should be pretty clear, we're a commercial entity, so we're for profit, which we do it in the way that I think we have a long-term view of the marketplace. We see it over a 10-year period or longer. We're not necessarily interested in making a buck today. We want to invest long-term in the marketplace and get a return from the marketplace. So just to give you an idea of our reach, this is just in the UK. We sell at the moment about 94,500 copies. We have a member-based website, which means that somebody has to register to become a member, so they have to give us some information. There are various levels of membership of our website, but the simplest level is you have to give us an email address and a postal address, and we have about 525,000 members. So that's the sort of size of the audience that we're integrating with on a I guess, daily basis, really. To put that in perspective in the marketplace, just to give you an idea of how big running is, there's a football magazine that sells a little bit more than we do, but not very much more, and most of the other sports or pastimes in the UK don't come close. I'm part of a publishing group, and we publish predominantly women's magazines, actually, so not running is a sort of small magazine for us, but it's actually a big opportunity, and it's quite a lucrative business. So it's a good business, both online and offline in other areas we publish. So all of our products are aimed at practitioners. So these are people who are doing the sport. It's not, this is not an armchair audience, and consequently it's not an athletics audience, although I'll come on to that and we do deal with some of that. So, but it is for people who are running, participating in running for whatever reasons. Our goal is to help them enjoy their running more, to educate them, to help them and encourage them to participate more and encourage others to do that, really. So it doesn't matter how good you are, what age you are, male or female, we're sort of neutral to the market in that regard. The only criteria is you've got to have an interest in running, really. So, as I said, we're about the activity of running. I mean, I talk a lot about the words involved with the sport and the activity, and I think for those of you who are not native English speakers, this is semantics, but we think of ourselves about the activity, not really the sport. And actually, that's the place we want to be, And the sport, in fact, about 2 years ago, we kind of came to the realization that most of our readers didn't really know anything about athletics. So we started introducing more athletics content into the magazine, tried to re-educate them. We could as easily have been talking about professional football, really, because in fact it was that foreign to them. Because as a participant at that time, their engagement with athletics was pretty low, according to most of the research we did. They didn't know any of the people really participating. They weren't any more likely than the average population to watch it on television or not. So the market as we see it, well, we really have never had it so good. I mean, running is booming. I mean, it really is booming. Everywhere we look, the running that we're about is booming. Race entries are up. Numbers coming into the market from various sources are up. I guess, sales of shoes in shoe companies are growing very strongly. Shoes tends to be the biggest area, well, other than football, actually, in the UK. I think after football, the running category is generally the biggest category that's out there. Now, it's not all servicing the sport, but nevertheless, it's a huge category. So I was very interested in Martin's presentation because it was the first time that I'd seen some real hardcore figures. I mean, the number of times people call me up and say, how many people are running in the UK? And I'd say, I don't know. I can tell you some factors, I can tell you some figures, some hard figures, and I can show you parameters that have moved. And if I'd shown you, for example, a graph of our circulation, Runners World circulation has increased incrementally for the last 14 years. I mean, it's quite a hard thing to do in the publishing business, to increase the circulation gradually over year by year. And it's accelerated over the last 3 or 4 years, so it's been growing quite a bit. And our website's been going for about, let's see, 5 years now, and it's taken time to build momentum, but again, it's a big website. I had a look the other day at some figures for sports websites, and other than the obvious things that were available in the UK, BBC Sport, Sky Sports, these things that have websites, running was the biggest participation website that was out there. So just an indication of how good the market is. And this isn't just, this isn't a British, clearly this is a European phenomenon, it's a worldwide phenomenon. So it's happening all around the world. I mean, I was at the AIMS conference a couple of weeks ago, really interesting chat with Vivek, who was the organizer of the Mumbai Marathon, telling me how India is booming. Absolute runners coming in all over the place. I'm sure that's a market that we'll be having a look at pretty quickly. So who's the new runner? So I know we talked about the female side of the market. It's still actually male. It's still predominantly a male activity for us. About 65% of our audience is male. It's, they're generally married, they're middle class, they're middle-aged. I think that the core group for males for us is probably 35 to 50. That's where we see with our, I think the median age of Runners World now is about 39. I used to think that the market was just getting older and older and everybody would just die and that we'd be run out of business, really. But in fact, with changes in the marketplace, it has actually been getting a bit younger over the last year. So if I'd gone back 10 years ago, our average age was older than it is now. So it's an interesting point. They're very affluent. The Runners World demographic is about the same as the Financial Times, except Runners World's slightly more affluent. It's ridiculous, but that's the marketplace we're in. These are well-educated people. They're often high-powered people, goal-orientated individuals. They, from the male side of things, are a bit more competitive. They want to take part in races. They're interested in getting faster. As we'll come on, the women are slightly different. We refer to the men often as second sport males. These are people who have probably played sport in their 20s, come out of a team sport like football, and discovered that probably by their early 30s they're getting fatter, they've got more on their plate, a lot of stress in their life, team sports don't work for them, how can they get back into shape? Running works on their terms. That's what they love about it. They can do it when they want, on their own, anywhere they want. Pack your shoes into your bag and you can run anywhere on a business trip, whatever it is. And it isn't a hobby. This is or a pastime. I mean, it's part of their life. I mean, I think if you're doing something 3-4 times a week, that's a lifestyle. It's not just a game or a hobby that you're participating in. And it's a positive statement about you as an individual. I mean, I put Sarkozy up there. I could have put Bill Clinton up there or George Bush. Probably not Gordon Brown, but he was out there recently running. So, I mean, it's interesting that in America, that's how it's viewed. You know, people want to make a positive statement about themselves by showing that they're a runner, they're fit, they're active, and I think that's happening in Europe as well, increasingly so. So, you know, he's running on his terms, when it suits him, when it fits in. with the demands of his life. That's the great thing. You know, he can do it. I run to work, actually. It's quite an easy way of getting in a regular run. And it seems like it's a free bit of exercise, which of course it is. But it's no longer just a male pursuit. I mean, the big change that's probably happened in the last 10 years in the UK, happening in other places as well, is the women coming into the market. They are, don't go into details here, but they're younger. Their goals are different. When you ask them why they're running, they talk about getting in shape, losing weight, feeling fitter, stronger, feeling better about themselves. And the great thing, I think, that really, engages these women more than anything is running works. I mean, they've been to gyms, they've been through the latest exercise fad, but actually running is a very honest exercise. You put into it, or you get out of it what you put into it, really. And I think that's an important lesson. That's why they stick with it. That's why it works. They can lose weight through running. It's cheap, doesn't cost us anything like a gym membership. And it's actually social, communal. They love that part of it as well. So, and times, I mean, I think this is something that Nick touched on clearly in his talk. I mean, sadly, if those of you who are at the Ames conference, you see I've got the same pictures again, actually. But it's an indication of it's about fun. It's a lot for them. It's about enjoyment. It isn't simply, of course, these people dress up as Father Christmas. In other races, they're interested in their times, but actually they're also interested in having some fun and enjoying themselves. So, I just wanted to touch on this. This is our view on where the sport of athletics is. Struggling. I mean, it's creating new initiatives. It's got a high TV profile, but you know, clearly, I think we all know this. Certainly in the UK, standards are falling. The numbers joining the sport through traditional areas are relatively in decline. I mean, relative to people coming in from other areas, and I'm afraid quite often for this ordinary consumer, the sport and its administration has no relevance. I mean, I don't think that most of the people that would be our readership, if we surveyed them, they would know very much at all about the sport or the administration. I mean, of course, there's no reason for them to. They're more interested in, can they get into the London Marathon? They're not interested in necessarily, of course, the sport underpins it, and the sport is involved in it, and the standards are a key part of it, but actually, it's not a relevant part of their running. It doesn't make any difference to them. So, a little bit about why I think the sport isn't capitalising on the new runner, from my point of view. So I think they don't understand the motivations, really. When you say I'm just interested in losing weight, you talk about the jogger and Joe Jogger and whatever terminology you want to put up there. Are these people sportsmen or not sportsmen, or sportswomen or not sportswomen? Probably in the classic criteria, they're not. And I think sports, from my view, I have children. They play team sports. It's a very structured process dealing with the sports administration. They sweep kids in as much as possible. You have your performance pyramid. It pushes people up with the idea of you having people at the top of the pyramid, the elite performers. Well, running, I think, and I think cycling is another area, but running more importantly is sort of changing that dynamic. You have this huge bulge of people coming in post-30, and the sport doesn't really know what to do with them because they don't follow a structure that the sport would like them to. They're not going to be Olympic athletes. They're not going to go forward, and their goals and motivations are not the same as children coming in. They're not influenced by elite athletes. I mean, it's interesting. For example, if we were to put Paula Radcliffe on the cover of Runner's World, the circulation would go down. If we put an elite athlete on the cover, it puts the circulation down. If you put a lifestyle runner on the cover, they'll perform much better than an elite athlete. I mean, just doesn't matter. So it's just a fact of life, really. So clearly, outside of events, I mean, events are a great opportunity because you can identify people in events. Outside of events, it's really hard to identify them and find them. They don't have to tell anybody they're a runner. They just go out and run. So it's quite hard to engage with these people if they don't appear to want anything. And I think their view is bounced back to athletics, that they think athletics is a bit elitist. They don't see any connection with it, and they don't want to be. They're not in it for competition, so they don't appear to want anything from you. And then there are plenty of people like ourselves in the marketplace who do want to capitalise on this opportunity and do want to take something from the marketplace. So you think, well, hey, I don't need to worry about it because somebody else is already doing it. So why should you be engaging with these runners? Well, I think it's not an opportunity, it's an imperative. I think you have to. This is the mass market. This is where the future lies and the numbers are. I mean, if you're not going to engage with this, you're just giving up a large part of the adult population of your country. So I think you have to engage with them. As I said before, they're affluent. They've got money to spend. They're interested in things. You can sell them things. I mean, clearly, if you look at them in financial terms, you have to, they're discerning shoppers, but you can sell them things. I mean, there are a lot of businesses taking advantage of the running market at the moment, successfully so. They're upmarket consumers. They're very influential. So they're more influential than you can imagine. They are people who can change policies within their companies to engage more with sport and activity. So, this is an influential group, and their parents. I'm a parent. Here I am with my children. They want to run. Actually, my daughter who's in the background, she's strangely a pole vaulter. Not too many opportunities for girls pole vaulting in the UK, but nevertheless, I live in London, so there are good opportunities for her. So, but we are, we might not be the future Olympians, but actually we do want to engage our children in a healthy activity, and we are interested in all the health benefits of running. So how do you engage with them? So here's just a few of my ideas, and I guess you can ignore them or not, but I think these are just things that, and I'm going to go on and give you a few examples in each of these case studies. But, so, touching on them, let's just go into the detail of them. I want to understand the power of marketing. Through a little story, I'll tell you about Hell Runner. Hell Runner is a UK event, and I go back a few years. I took part in an event on one Saturday. It was a traditional cross-country race called the Gordon Pirie 10, put on by South London Harriers, a very traditional athletics club. I turned up on a Saturday afternoon, had an argument with the guy over whether Runners World was an affiliated club and would he give me my £1 off, the usual argument about it. It was a £5 entry fee, I think. There were no facilities on site. I had to walk 15 minutes up the road for where the race started. It was 40 people, men like me, taking part in the race. We got changed, put our bags under the tree, and off we went and ran 10 miles of cross-country in miserable conditions, up and down hillsides, which is kind of what cross-country represents. I'm not that great a runner. I did about 60 minutes. I was almost last. So it's just a fairly typical example. A week later, I turned up at another race, first time it had been held. It was called the Hell Runner, and it had invented itself as a race about adventure running. It was about 15 miles away from where I'd run the previous week on the South Downs, and I was a bit surprised to find out it was almost the same course in places that we were running over. And it was a bit grittier and horrible. It had more mud, but it marketed itself differently. It talked about the hills of death and the bog of doom and all of these things that actually engaged in the audience. They charged it was £25 for entry then. They had, first year, about 1,200 people turned up, loved it, came away from it saying, what a fabulous event, how I love this event. It was cross-country. I mean, it was cross-country. It was worse than cross-country. It was really hard cross-country. But they didn't seem to worry about that, and it was just an interesting 1 week's juxtaposition, 2 races, similar course, same distance, same conditions. Actually, I almost won that one, actually, with nearly 60 minutes, but, just wondering about it. But so in 2003, they had about 800 people. Next year, when I spoke to the organizer, Runners World is a supporter of these races, which is why I mention it, but they expect to have actually about 12,500 people taking part of it. Not a huge race, but just an opportunity about reinventing something called cross-country and making it into something else. Adventure running? I don't think anybody really understands what it is. It doesn't really matter. But you couldn't sell that market cross-country. Here's another example of where clubs are in the UK. We've heard a lot about clubs and engagement with clubs. I'm not sure that... this is, again, how the sport wants you to go in its route. It's got clubs. It wants you to be part of that structure. Say, hey, if you want to engage with us, join our club. We've got a club structure. That's the way we want to push you. That's what we want you to do and how we want you to come into our sport. Well, the rules are changing. These people aren't that interested. They don't want to join a traditional club, and therefore, what are you going to do with them? Because actually, I think clubs are a fairly passive force. They're not... I've never been to a race and seen a club advertising itself for members. I mean, they just don't do it. I mean, they rely quite often on word of mouth, recommendations, reputation in the marketplace, but they're not aggressive marketers of themselves. And in fact, I quite often think they don't want big membership because, of course, they have limited facilities, and if you've got 500 people turning up on the track on a club night, they'd be a bit disappointed because they wouldn't have room to run. So almost that structure doesn't really encourage lots of people to come along. Here's something that the new clubs, there are lots of new clubs that I would talk about engaging with people in the running market, and I just point out to these people because I live in London, and actually one of the more recent phenomenons in London is British Military Fitness. It's personal training, but group personal training put on by, well, I think they try to pretend they're ex-soldiers, but they're probably just people dressed up in camouflage. I think I'm not quite sure they're really ex-soldiers. And when you see them, there are big packs of these runners running around with bibs on. They have about, I don't know, there's about 800 people train on an average night on Clapham Common, which is just one park in London, in various groups of different levels. And when I look at them, what are they doing? They're just running. They're just running around in groups together with a leader. Okay, he's in camouflage and he's shouting at them a lot. And they pay to do this. I mean, they pay the price of a gym membership to do this. I mean, British Military Fitness, I think it's about £40, €50 a month. You have to sign up and you pay them on a direct debit. And, but still, they've got huge numbers. And they operate like a club. They've got memberships, they put on events, they put on social evenings, they put on holidays, and they just have nothing at all to do. Well, I don't know whether they may have something to do with sport, but I don't think they do. They're an example of it. I mean, you might, it's not quite the same, but you could turn up at Nike Town and see Nike runners in London. You can turn up at a lot of companies in central London and see how they've got their own little running club that's now started that isn't necessarily engaged with the sport, but they're doing it. So I'd say if you don't recognise that the rules have changed about how you can engage with these people, then you'll just miss them, because they will be sold to, marketed to by somebody who's much more commercial about the way they're going about things. So a lesson from the past for you here about find out what they want, not what you want to give them or take from them. So there's a from missing there. I think this is a great case in point. When I remember Race for Life, I think Nick had mentioned it before, it's the biggest race series in the country. It has, well, as I said, 735,000 women last year took part in Race for Life. These are women-only 5K races. I know Europe has, many countries in Europe have similar races. And in fact, this race series is based on the Race for the Cure from America, so it's not even a new idea. They just took it and executed it in the UK. When this race first started, it had about 900 people. Runners World were one of the sponsors of it. We thought, great idea, this is brilliant. This is a beginner's running program. The more we can encourage these people to participate, the more opportunity down the line we have a chance to sell them a subscription to Runners World. I mean, that was our pure commercial thinking. At the moment, there's 900. If they can get 1,000 or 2,000, and the more these people come back, the more chance we have to engage with them. And okay, it's a big number. And I think when we target them, we get about, I think last year, about 3,500 subscribers out of Race for Life. So it's not big compared with the number of people that are doing it, but that's still a much better return, I think, in absolute terms than we would from dealing with the London Marathon, which is a smaller number of people than we engage with. So they are interested in your sport and your activity if you want to engage them. Unfortunately, I think there was a dispute, and I think Jeff probably remembers a bit of this, but classically, they viewed the sport as a tax collector, didn't understand why they had to pay why they were paying money and not being supported the other way around. So essentially, this group of people now sits outside the sport. They don't need the sport to operate. They operate in parks. They're not on the public road. They don't have licenses for their events. They are fun events sponsored by or supported by local councils invariably. So, but it's a perfect example. I mean, I've always thought of this as a great engagement opportunity for the sport to say, great, these people are going to bring in 750,000, 735,000 new women or existing women into my sport and participate with them. So, another thing, just about being a bit more creative, but don't forget the obvious stuff. I mean, this is if you think these people don't want to buy what you have to offer, well, you just got to be a bit more creative about what you're selling and how you're dealing with them, because there are countless opportunities to engage with them. And I'm bringing up another example here of something that's happening in the UK. There's a phenomenon, small phenomenon, but it's happening, something called park runs. Started back in 2003. The concept is a very simple one. It's a timed 5K run, absolutely free. You just turn up in a park. It first happened in Bushy Park, which is a park in South London. He thought that, the organizer thought, I might get 40 people to turn up and do this. I think I think the first time we got about 120 people, or sorry, got 13 people the first time. Subsequent races are up to over 100, but it's a very simple concept. You don't have to pay anything. You have to register once, then you just turn up. And it's a very professional organization behind it. Your times are up there in the same day. It's all web interactive. But, and now this phenomenon has spread around the country. They're still free. There are, I guess, well, what did we say here? 30,000 people are registered on its database. That's what it would expect to be participating in this race series. But it's, again, a simple, very straightforward idea. Actually, this is a non-commercial idea, and the organisers have worked hard to make it non-commercial. They don't want ever to charge people for it. So, but again, it's another activity that you think this is doing the job of sport for it, really. So, and lastly, I'm just going to touch on a bit about embracing the technological world, and in fact, we're kind of getting there in the UK, certainly with Run Britain, which I think is now recognising that there's a great opportunity to engage with people through a portal. I'm just going to tell you just a little bit about, Runner's World has another site, actually, that it's called the strangely named fetcheveryone.com, but it was a bedroom evening project from a programmer who liked running, but he wasn't very good at running. And so he created this portal in the evening and started engaging with the community. And it was almost, we discovered it because it had a very anti-Runner's World bias. And they came onto our forums and saying how bad we were all the time and how you should come to Fetch Everyone. And we thought, they're getting a lot of traffic and a lot of traction, we better buy them and actually make them part of our community. So in fact, we bought them. We sit them out there as a separate entity, but it's probably the closest thing, I think, to a virtual club operating. It has 35,000 registered members. It is, after Runner's World, it's the most active running website in the UK. The average time that a person spends on the website is something like 90 minutes a day of these 35,000 people. So, they're really engaged in the website. In fact, it's moved from being a website into being a real club. They're running races, they've got their own kit, they're actually I think they're officially affiliated now. The affiliated club has about 500 members, part of it. So, but again, it's an example of saying, well, hey, nobody said there was an opportunity for this. The guy just created it, made it himself, built the site, drove the traffic, created a commercial entity. We bought it. We've commercialized it a bit more, make money out of it. I mean, I think it's not necessarily about making money, but it's, we need to make money to operate because, in fact, we have shareholders and that's how we operate. But again, it's another example that there are lots of opportunities in this marketplace, certainly online opportunities, online training opportunities. There are lots of things that are out there that other people are going to grab pretty soon if you don't take the message and move forward with it. So that pretty much is it. I think this market, as I said before, it's not an opportunity, it's an imperative. You've got to engage with it. And if you don't, you're just going to make yourselves irrelevant. So there we go. Thank you very much.